First Christian Church, Burlington, Iowa, South Hill, on South Street, the old parsonage.
Sing in the cross of Christ I glory. Paul in his preaching. He preached Christ crucified. Foolishness to the Greeks and a stumbling block to the Jews. But his successors find precisely the same thing today. Clever people, the equivalent of the Greeks of St. Paul's day, can conceive a power or a mind or a will or a thought behind the observed phenomena of life. But it seems to them a stupid approach to present that supreme power reduced to human stature and dying on a criminal's cross. There are those who claim to have the deepest possible reverence for the awful majesty of the Most High God, and possibly they do. But to them it is unthinkable that God Himself should divest Himself of this majesty and take upon Himself the limitations of human flesh, and not only that, to suffer unspeakable representative of man. Viewed in a strange, unearthly way, the preaching of Christ accomplishes what all high thinking and clever talk could never do. It changes people. We point with ridicule to those we call the hypocrites of the church. It is comparatively easy to point to the shortcomings of those who have church membership, but we repeat, the preaching of the cross of Christ does change people. For if we had the mind to, we could as easily point to those individuals whose lives are stronger and richer, fuller, more expressive, because they have been changed by a faith in God, who took upon Himself the form of a servant and became obedient even unto the death of the cross. The mysterious effect upon human personality by the preaching of the cross and the subsequent power of a faith in the resurrection can be illustrated from the lives of those we have rubbed shoulders with day by day. The power is evident in dark and difficult places where evil has been heavily entrenched for centuries. It becomes apparent where modern clevers have exerted their finest wisdom only to fail. The preaching of the cross is the power of God. There is no name given among men whereby ye must be saved, the Bible says, referring to Jesus. And this is the way that it is, whether we accept it or not, whether it makes sense to us or not. Part of the infection of this world, a part of what theologians often call the original sin, is a tendency in us all to avoid the difficult and the unpleasant and to take the line of least resistance if we possibly can. There are exceptions to this tendency, of course. But unquestionably, millions of people ingeniously evade mental or spiritual conflicts when they can, to avoid hard work either of a physical or mental character, and to take great care not to become involved in the situations where they might possibly fall, or expose themselves to ridicule, or make any kind of personal sacrifice. I suppose that we shouldn't be surprised at this attitude, but it's particularly tragic and deplorable when it appears among professing Christians, when there is on their part the dodging of the cost and the pain of the Christian way of life. The way of the cross is the way of vigor, of courage, of energy, of effort, of commitment, of discipline, and of sacrifice. Nominal Christianity, which has been called Christianity without tears, may have a kind of limited virtue. Frequently these people are honest and kind and unselfish, but they, in their own way, have succeeded in dodging the cross. always be the danger of this nominal Christianity, particularly when it is obvious that it pays to be a Christian. Most of us would admit that unless we take up our cross daily, our Christian witness slowly deteriorates. J.B. Phillips tells of a friend of his who replied to a letter in which he had asked his opinion with regard to a given book. And the friend said something like this: part of the appeal of the book lies in the fact that the author has substituted a plastic cross for the heavy wooden one which the good Lord sometimes calls upon us to bear. The reply may be amusing, but it's illuminating. Human nature being what it is, we're apt to evade the particular cross which God calls upon us to bear, and then to satisfy our consciences we invest a plastic one which looks impressive, but it is a little more comfortable to carry. To be sure, there are those who enjoy being martyrs. They find it difficult to receive joy by relaxation, encouragement, or praise, or a suspicion of Christian living which is not painful and difficult. But the plain fact is that the Christian must accept life at the hands of God. If he is called to pain, distress, or persecution, or joy and satisfaction, he must accept them for what they are. I suppose that generally we can understand the cross is a way of sacrifice, a way of adaptation, a way of shaping and reshaping, changing and rechanging our thoughts, our words, and our conduct. But the cross represents something else. It represents a love to us. God has put no motive on any advisory board to stipulate what compromises should be acceptable to him. I suspect that it does. It is a poor Christian indeed who cannot see that God cares for the whole man and leaves the solving of these problems, hundreds of problems, the minds of those who know the purpose of God and are committed to it. Thus, the cross is primarily the symbol of action, the action of reconciliation with God, and the mark of faithful discipleship. We cannot avoid having the cross in our head, but we must have it first in our